In light of China's unacceptable action, I am postponing my planned travel this weekend to China.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said his visit to China was on hold, a trip that had been expected to start on Friday as a suspected Chinese spy balloon floated across the United States.
Yesterday, the Department of Defense announced that we had detected and were tracking a high-altitude surveillance balloon that remains over the continental United States. We continue to track and monitor the balloon closely. We're confident this is a Chinese surveillance balloon. The presence of this surveillance balloon in U.S. airspace is a clear violation of U.S. sovereignty and international law, that it's an irresponsible act, and that the PRC's decision to take this action on the eve of my planned visit is detrimental to the substantive discussions that we were prepared to have.
Officials said military leaders considered shooting the balloon down over Montana on Wednesday, but declined due to the safety risk from falling debris. China earlier expressed regret that what it called a civilian airship had strayed into U.S. territory after being blown off course. On Friday, Pentagon spokesman Brigadier General Patrick Ryder said the balloon had changed course and was now floating eastward at about 60,000 feet and demonstrated a capability to maneuver. But he would not go into specifics.
But does the public not have a right to know if a balloon
the public
is over
certainly
their state?
has the ability to look up in the sky and see where the balloon is.
Ryder said the balloon was at an altitude well above commercial air traffic and did not present a military or physical threat to people on the ground. Blinken said he was not going to put a date on when he might go to China, and the focus was on resolving the current incident.
The most important thing right now in the moment is to see that this surveillance asset gets out of our airspace, and we'll take it from there.
The trip delay is a blow to those on both sides who saw it as an overdue opportunity to stabilize an increasingly fractious relationship with China. The last visit by a U.S. Secretary of State was in 2017.
A strong Arctic blast swept into the U.S. Northeast on Friday, threatening what the U.S. National Weather Service called, quote, life-endangering temperatures in many areas. An advisory from the Weather Service warned that the mass of frigid air could bring, quote, extremely dangerous conditions. Boston and Worcester, the two largest cities in New England, were among the school districts closed on Friday, so kids wouldn't have to risk getting hypothermia or frostbite on their way to school. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu earlier in the week declared a state of emergency through Sunday and opened warming centers to help the city's more than 650,000 residents to prepare for what could shape up to be a, quote, once-in-a-generation cold front. Forecasters expected Boston's temperature to plummet to -3 degrees Fahrenheit by early Saturday. At New Hampshire's Mount Washington State Park, home to the highest and coldest peak in the Northeast, temperatures were expected to fall to a record low of -50 degrees Fahrenheit, with a wind chill that could drop to -110 degrees Fahrenheit.
The U.S. economy added more than 500,000 new jobs in January, signaling a labor market that remains robust and resilient in the face of higher interest rates and fears of recession. The Labor Department on Friday reported the U.S. added 517,000 new jobs last month and revised December's jobs report higher from 223,000 to 260,000. Average hourly earnings also climbed, rising 0.3% in January. U.S. President Joe Biden on Friday hailed the numbers as a success of his policies to fuel growth while restraining rising prices.
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
The U.S. unemployment rate fell to 3.4%, the lowest level in more than half a century. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics last month updated the formulas it uses to smooth out the data for regular seasonal fluctuations, and January's figure should not be compared against the 3.5% unemployment rate for the month before. Still, the strength of the U.S. job market could give the Federal Reserve room to continue raising interest rates as it tries to tamp down rising wages in its efforts to curb inflation. John Lear is chief economist at Morning Consult.
My sense is that we all knew that the U.S. labor market was very tight right now. And so, the expectation prior to today's release was for let's say 185,000 new jobs created. 517 is clearly much stronger. That gives the Fed some sense, of course, that, workers are going to continue to be added, that wage pressure is likely to remain high. And I think on net, it pushes the Fed to be a little bit more hawkish and likely to keep interest rates higher for longer.
We still think there's work to do there.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell said this week, quote, "The economy can return to 2% inflation without a really significant downturn or a really big increase in unemployment." Lear sees weaker job growth ahead.
We have strong jobs growth right now, elevated inflation, a Fed that is likely to keep interest rates higher for a long period of time. And I think all of that combined is very likely to lead to fairly slow jobs growth later this year.
Government data this week showed there were 11 million job openings at the end of December, with 1.9 openings for every unemployed person.
A man who was caught carrying a loaded crossbow at late Queen Elizabeth's Windsor Castle home has pleaded guilty to threatening to kill the monarch and to an offence under the Treason Act. 21-year-old Jaswant Singh Chahal from southern England said, "I am here to kill the Queen," when he was arrested. He was found dressed in black clothing and wearing a hood, metal mask and gloves in the grounds of the castle to the west of London at around 8 a.m. on Christmas Day in 2021. Britain's Queen Elizabeth, who died last September, was at the castle on the day of the incident, along with her son and now King Charles and other close family members. Prosecutors said that Chahal had spent months planning the attack. Once inside the castle's grounds, he was confronted by a protection officer in an area where the intruder would have access to the private quarters. The recovered crossbow had the potential to cause serious or fatal injuries. Chahal recorded a video before he entered the castle grounds, which he sent to his phone contacts before his arrest. In that video, he said, "I am sorry for what I have done and what I will do. I'm going to attempt to assassinate Elizabeth, Queen of the royal family." This is revenge for those who died in the 1919 massacre, Chahal added, a reference to when British colonial troops shot nearly 400 Sikhs dead in their holy city of Amritsar in northwestern India. Indians have long demanded a formal apology from Britain for the massacre. Prosecutors said electronic devices were also recovered that showed Chahal had previously applied to jobs that would bring him closer to the royals. Appearing on video link at London's Old Bailey on Friday, Chahal spoke only to confirm his name and enter his guilty pleas. Chahal is the first person in 40 years to be convicted under the 1842 Treason Act. The judge said he would sentence him on March 31st.
Air raid sirens sounded across Ukraine on Friday as President Volodymyr Zelensky hosted European Union leaders to discuss more sanctions on Russia and Ukraine's prospects of joining the bloc. With thick snow falling, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen visited an EU-backed energy-efficient light bulb scheme to reduce demand on a power grid damaged by Russian attacks.
7 times.
And Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell toured a demining site. It was a show of support as the first anniversary of Russia's invasion approaches on February 24th. But the EU is not expected to fast-track Ukraine's membership while it is at war, as Kiev wants. It applied to join the bloc days after the invasion. Instead, that process is likely to take years. EU officials have listed multiple membership requirements, from political and economic stability to adopting various EU laws.
If there was needed a living proof that Russia is suffering a massive strategic failure, but Ukraine is withstanding and is building its path towards the European Union, well, the fact that we are here for the 24th summit, Ukraine, European Union, amidst the war, but we are building, discussing and developing the future of Ukraine in the European Union. That is speaking more than 1,000 words.
Zelensky wants more punitive measures against Russia, but the next set of sanctions the bloc is preparing for the anniversary are expected to fall short of his demands. He also stressed the need to tighten sanctions.
We are very interested in making sure that Russia does not have a chance to restore its military capacity. Sanctions have slowed down this process. We have a clear understanding of what number of missiles were produced before the full-fledged invasion, and what is happening now thanks to the EU, US and British sanctions and sanctions by other partners. That is why it is very important for us to make sure they cannot find ways to bypass sanctions, something they do thanks to other countries.
As well as sanctions, they discussed more arms, money and energy support, better access for Ukrainian products in the EU market, and efforts to prosecute Russian war crimes.